Suffering is a fundamental condition of human existence, a universal experience that transcends cultures, epochs, and personal circumstances. But what does it truly mean to suffer? And how does suffering relate to the condition of life that we all share? Suffering can be understood as the natural response to situations of loss, disillusionment, illness, or emotional pain. It is a manifestation of our deep engagement with the world and the people around us. When we love, hope, or dream, we open ourselves up to the possibility of suffering, as each of these states carries the risk of misunderstandings and disappointments. However, suffering goes beyond the simple fact of experiencing pain or sadness. It challenges our understanding of who we are and what we value, provoking deep reflections on our desires and expectations. At times, it is in the crucible of suffering that we find ourselves more profoundly, discovering strengths and weaknesses that we did not recognize before. In this sense, suffering is not just a condition of life, but also a catalyst for growth and personal transformation. This relationship between suffering and growth is a theme explored by many philosophies and spiritual traditions. Many teachings suggest that confronting and accepting suffering can lead to a deeper understanding of life and a richer appreciation of its complexities and beauties. This does not mean glorifying pain, but recognizing that within the context of our painful experiences, there is the possibility for learning and personal enrichment. Therefore, in exploring human suffering, we are not just considering the causes and effects of pain, but also how this pain intertwines with the broader fabric of our lives. How we react to suffering, how we manage it, and what we learn from it can define the course of our lives in significant ways. Western philosophy has approached suffering in various ways, reflecting on its causes, meanings, and implications. Thinkers like Heraclitus, Schopenhauer, and Jean-Paul Sartre offer distinct perspectives that together enrich our understanding of the nature of suffering. For Heraclitus, a pre-Socratic philosopher, reality is in constant flux, and this inevitable change is the essence of life. He famously said that one cannot step into the same river twice, symbolizing with this the constant transformation of existence. Within this view, suffering is seen as a natural and inevitable part of life. Far from being merely negative, Heraclitus saw in suffering a vital force for growth and personal evolution. He argued that conflicts and challenges not only test our resilience, but are also crucial for our development, propelling us to achieve a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Arthur Schopenhauer, on the other hand, had a more pessimistic view of suffering. He saw desire and will as the driving forces of human life, but also as sources of incessant suffering. For Schopenhauer, life is permeated by a constant struggle in which suffering is inherent and inevitable. The only solution, according to him, is the renunciation of worldly desires, which can lead to a state of quiet resignation, minimizing suffering by reducing personal expectations and desires. Jean-Paul Sartre, a proponent of existentialism, placed individual freedom at the center of his philosophy. For Sartre, suffering stems from the awareness of freedom and the responsibility that comes with this freedom. He argued that, as we become aware of our freedom, we also realize the infinite possibilities and the choices we must make. This freedom of choice is paradoxically a source of anguish, as each decision carries the weight of consequences that only we can bear. Suffering in this context is a byproduct of our freedom to shape our own lives. These three perspectives provide a rich panorama of suffering in Western philosophy. From Heraclitus, we learn to accept and embrace suffering as an integral part of life and an agent of growth. With Schopenhauer, we are confronted with the reality that desire can be a source of continuous suffering, suggesting a life of moderation as a means of finding peace. And from Sartre, we gain an understanding of personal freedom as both a blessing and a burden, whose management is essential for our emotional and psychological well-being. Eastern philosophies, with their deep spiritual and existential roots, offer unique perspectives on suffering that complement and contrast with Western approaches. Taoism and Buddhism in particular present enlightening views on how suffering is perceived and how it can be transcended. In Taoism, harmony with the Tao, which is the fundamental principle of the universe, is essential for a balanced life. Suffering, according to this philosophy, often arises from resistance to the fluid nature of life. When we try to control or resist the inevitable changes that life brings, we create conflict and consequently suffering. Taoists believe that by accepting the natural flow of events and not opposing the forces of nature, we can find peace and reduce our suffering. The idea is that life has its own rhythm and order, and the more we align with this natural flow, the less resistance and suffering we experience. Buddhism, founded on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, places suffering at the core of its doctrine. The Four Noble Truths are the essence of Buddhist teachings and begin with the assertion that life, in its essence, contains suffering. This suffering is caused by desire, by the craving for permanence in a world that is intrinsically impermanent. The third truth reveals that it is possible to cease suffering, and the fourth presents the Eightfold Path as the method to achieve this cessation, leading to nirvana, a state of liberation and transcendence from suffering. Buddhism teaches that by understanding the transient nature of all things and reducing our attachments and desires, we can mitigate suffering. The practice of meditation and the development of compassion and wisdom are fundamental on this path. Thus, reaching nirvana is about transcending the state of suffering that is so intrinsic to the human condition, achieving a peace that is independent of external circumstances. Both Taoism and Buddhism encourage us to look inward and reconsider our relationship with the external world and our internal expectations. While Taoism emphasizes the importance of aligning with the natural rhythm of the universe, Buddhism challenges us to understand and transform the roots of our suffering. Both philosophies offer valuable pathways to self-acceptance and inner peace, complementing Western reflections on how we face and interpret life's challenges. Exploring these Eastern philosophies, we are invited to adopt a stance of openness and continuous learning about the causes of our suffering and how we can, step by step, move toward a more fulfilling and harmonious existence. Alan Watts, an influential philosopher and speaker, played a crucial role in bringing Eastern philosophy to a Western audience. His unique approach integrated profound concepts from the East with Western psychological ideas, helping to create a bridge of understanding that resonated with many seekers of wisdom around the world. Watts had a special ability to explore and explain how certain fundamental illusions, particularly those of the ego, money, and time, shape and often distort our experience of life, leading to profound forms of suffering. He argued that many of our anxieties and dissatisfactions arise from the way we incorrectly identify with these concepts, allowing them to define who we are in how we value our lives and the lives of others. The discussion of the ego was central to Watts's work. He explored how the ego, which we often consider our true self, is actually a mental construct filled with desires, fears, and unrealistic expectations. Partially inspired by the concepts of Sigmund Freud, Watts discussed the complexity of the ego in relation to the ID and the superego, the components of the psyche that influence our behavior from different angles of our minds. The ID represents primitive impulses and instincts. The ego attempts to balance these impulses with external reality, and the superego brings in learned moral norms and rules. Watts emphasized that suffering often arises when there is conflict between these aspects of the mind, or when the ego tries to override or ignore the needs of the ID or the constraints of the superego. He also discussed how social pressures to achieve success and accumulate wealth can distort our sense of value and purpose, leading us to pursue goals that do not necessarily bring us happiness or fulfillment. When discussing money and time, Watts explained that our relationship with these concepts is often based on illusory perceptions. We attribute to them a power and a reality that go beyond their true functions as tools of exchange and measures of activity. This distorted view can cause a great deal of anxiety and dissatisfaction as we find ourselves caught in a constant race against time or in an unending quest for financial security, often at the expense of our health and well-being. By integrating these ideas, Watts not only provided a richer understanding of how suffering manifests in our modern lives, but also offered pathways to overcome it. He encouraged people to look beyond the illusions of the ego, to reassess their priorities concerning money and time, and to seek a life that was truly enriching and aligned with their deepest values. The dynamic between reality and illusion plays a crucial role in how we experience and interpret our lives. Freud, one of the most influential thinkers in the field of psychology, introduced us to the complex interaction between the ego, the ID, and the superego, components of the mind that deeply influence our behavior and emotional perceptions. According to Freud, the ID represents our most primitive instincts and desires, operating according to the pleasure principle, seeking immediate satisfaction. The superego, in turn, functions as a kind of moral conscience, influenced by social norms and values we have learned. The ego acts as a mediator between the often conflicting demands of the ID and the constraints of the superego, trying to find a balance that respects external reality. This interaction between the three instances can be a source of significant psychic suffering when there is an imbalance. For example, an overly strict superego can lead to feelings of guilt or inadequacy, while an unrestrained ID can result in impulsive behaviors that disturb our peace and that of those around us. Beyond internal struggles, Freud helps us understand how external illusions, such as money and success, influence our well-being. We live in a society that often measures individual worth by material success and the accumulation of wealth. This illusion of money as an indicator of success and happiness can lead to a relentless pursuit of wealth, often at the expense of our personal relationships, mental health, and life satisfaction. The social pressures associated with wealth and success are not only stressful, but can distort our perception of reality, leading us to believe that material accumulation is the path to true happiness. This deception can divert us from more meaningful values, such as human connection, personal fulfillment, and spiritual growth. Understanding this dynamic between reality and illusion is essential to alleviate suffering and pursue a more authentic and satisfying life. By Recognizing the limitations of our psyche and the distortions imposed by social pressures, we can begin to question these illusions and redirect our focus to what truly matters. This knowledge encourages us to seek a healthy balance between our desires and our moral obligations, and to reassess our definitions of success and fulfillment. By doing so, we can gradually free ourselves from the shackles of social and psychological illusions and pave the way for a fuller and more rewarding reality where the true meaning of life can be discovered and lived. Perspective on suffering and reality. The relationship between suffering and reality is complex and deeply intertwined with the human condition. Suffering, in its multiple forms, is an inevitable experience in everyone's life. From minor daily frustrations to major tragedies, suffering permeates our experiences, profoundly influencing how we perceive ourselves and the world around us. Suffering is a universal constant, but the intensity and impact it has on us can vary greatly. Some people may face extraordinary adversities and somehow find the resilience needed to continue, while others may be deeply affected by seemingly minor challenges. This variation often depends on a combination of personal factors, such as our life history, our mental health, our support systems, and our ability to cope with stress and pain. One of the most effective ways to deal with suffering is to cultivate the ability to live in the present. Often, our suffering is exacerbated or even caused by the tendency to dwell on the past or to worry excessively about the future. Learning to focus on the here and now can not only reduce anxiety and stress, but also allow us to appreciate the positive aspects of our life that might go unnoticed when we are lost in worries. Finding harmony with suffering, in turn, does not mean resigning oneself or passively accepting pain. Instead, it involves recognizing suffering as part of the reality of life and learning to move through it with grace and strength. This can involve developing greater self-awareness, practicing compassion, both for oneself and for others, and engaging in activities that promote meaning and purpose. This focus on the present and harmonization with suffering encourages us to reconsider not only how we face adversity, but also how we can extract valuable lessons from these experiences. Many spiritual and philosophical traditions suggest that through suffering, we have the opportunity to grow in wisdom, empathy, and emotional depth. Rather than an insurmountable obstacle, suffering can be seen as an invitation to a deeper exploration of who we are and how we relate to the world. Therefore, as we reflect on suffering and reality, we are called to adopt an active and conscious stance towards our life experience. Understanding that suffering is an integral part of our existence can free us to live more fully with a renewed appreciation for each moment and strengthen resilience in the face of life's inevitable storms. Alan Watts, through his lectures and writings, offers a revitalizing perspective on how we can approach and mitigate suffering in our lives. He advocates for the liberation from suffering through a practice of both emotional and material detachment, and emphasizes the importance of consciously creating our own reality while remaining firmly anchored in the present. The concept of detachment, so central to Watts's thinking, does not imply indifference or disinterest in the things of the world. Instead, it is about a deeper understanding that our happiness and inner peace should not depend solely on external circumstances or material possessions. Watts teaches that suffering often stems from our own attachments and expectations. We want things to be a certain way, we fear change, or we place our happiness in the hands of others, or in the acquisition of material goods. By practicing detachment, we learn to accept losses and changes as natural parts of life, thus reducing the emotional impact they can have on us. Beyond detachment, Watts places a strong emphasis on each individual's ability to create their own reality. This is not a denial of objective reality, but rather an encouragement to take an active role in shaping our experiences and perceptions. According to Watts, by changing our attitude and perspective towards situations, we can significantly alter our life experience. This involves choosing more conscious and deliberate responses to challenges, rather than reacting automatically based on old and often destructive patterns. Finally, Watts emphasizes the importance of being present in the now. Living in the present moment is crucial for practicing detachment and for the conscious creation of reality. Often, our suffering is amplified by worries about the future or regrets over the past. By focusing on the now, we can more fully enjoy life, appreciating the small joys and facing challenges with our heads held high. Being present helps us cultivate gratitude and recognize the opportunities for growth that each moment offers.